Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski. Today we'll be going over the scenario Pax Cthuliana, written by Jarl Hawktorson and Evan V. Rosslin. I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing those. The scenario was published by Two Starving Gnolls in 2017 after a successful Kickstarter campaign. It's the first release by Two Starving Gnolls, and I, for one, am extremely impressed with it. The module comes in at a whopping 70 pages, but most of that is going to be art and handouts. It can also be played in a single session. It took us, with a group of myself and 5 players, about 3.5 hours to play the scenario from start to finish. It's set in 1920s London and is very unique in that it uses puzzles and music as key story elements. It comes with over 25 beautiful handouts, so game masters are going to need to have some really good scissors in order to play this. But the other thing that makes Pax Cthuliana very interesting is that while it's very much in the vein of the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, it is not Call of Cthulhu. It actually doesn't require any specific game system in order to run it, so you could use any RPG mechanic that you are comfortable with and just incorporate that into 1927 London and you are good to go. Because it relies heavily on roleplay and players piecing together the different clues in order to solve the puzzles, there's actually very few places that dice actually need to be rolled. However, most of your players are going to need to have a very good working knowledge of the Cthulhu mythos in order to play it, because it relies heavily on player knowledge, and you would rather have the players use their own knowledge and get into it than have the characters be making knowledge rolls or anything like that. Again, this game is far more about roleplay and about the players piecing together the clues than it is about the actual rolling of dice or any of the other kind of classic things that RPGs are known for. And because music is a very key part of this adventure, game masters should pick up the Pax Cthuliana soundtrack, links below. In addition to the module's soundtrack, it also suggests that game masters pick up several key songs from both the Interstellar and Dragon Age Inquisition soundtracks, and I also agree with that and encourage game masters to pick those songs up as well. We had a lot of fun with this scenario, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer my criticisms and my suggestions as a game master who has successfully run this adventure.
Hey, and I'm Jack, the NPC. I'm going to be giving this to you from a player's side of things.
Wow, look at you all fancy. But shouldn't you be speaking with a British accent?
Have you even heard my British accent? It is awful. I mean, we're talking about worse than Costner's Robin Hood here. It's like Jason Statham mixed with Dick Van Dyke's Chimney Sweep, but way worse.
Okay then. But before we go any further, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So for any players in the audience, you should stop here, but send your game masters this way to see if Pax Cthuliana might be a right fit for your group. Okay, game masters, let's dive in. Pax Cthuliana is an extremely unique module. The basic plot is that Great Cthulhu is about to rise in London, and the only way to stop him is by the players piecing together and aligning the certain symbols on this puzzle. Because I was on the Kickstarter, I added the clay version of the puzzle to my rewards. But for those of you that missed out on it, you'll need to print out the provided puzzle that comes with the adventure. As a suggestion, instead of simply printing it out on paper, which can curl at the ends whenever you print it out, you might want to just print it out on cardstock instead, or something pretty sturdy. Or you could glue it directly to a piece of cardboard and then cut out all the individual pieces so that way they all have that cardboard thickness. However, I wouldn't suggest doing that on anything like corrugated cardboard, because that way the players might just actually line up the corrugation lines, and that's kind of a cheating way to solve the puzzle.
Not if you scrambled up the pieces on the cardboard before you glued them down, then no one could try to cheat that.
Also, you can get the PDF of the puzzle and the 26 handouts for it for free at DriveThruRPG, so you'll definitely want to pick this up in order to print everything out before you run it. Once again, links below. The PCs are assumed to be a little bit experienced with the mythos and should all know each other prior to the beginning of the adventure. Maybe this isn't their first adventure together, maybe you're working this into a campaign that you've already started, but if you're doing this as a one-shot or as a first adventure for a different campaign, then you're going to need to establish beforehand that all of these characters do have mythos experience and all the characters do know each other prior to the beginning. The adventure begins right in the middle of the action, or in media res, as they say. The PCs find themselves atop St. Paul's Cathedral in London with a woman that they don't recognize. The Game Master will need to begin one of the select music tracks from the Interstellar soundtrack. They'll give them the scrambled puzzle, and once the music begins playing, they'll begin describing the coming of Cthulhu as these great portals open up in the sky, and the players are frantically trying to align this puzzle that they've never seen before in order to stop his coming.
Holy crap, what is up with this puzzle? And who is this lady? And what is up with this music? What the hell is going on here?
The module presents this scene with the different stages to go along with the music. I strongly suggest that Game Masters practice this a couple times before the game. That way they can get all the timing and the drama all nice and perfect for their introduction. While there is a tiny possibility that the players might accidentally assemble the puzzle correctly, it's like a 1 in 240 chance, so it's not very likely. But if they do, the Game Masters just kind of roll along with it, because this is really just a vision of a possible future, and once the PCs see Great Cthulhu rise from the water, they're all going to wake up from their dreams screaming. At this point, you will then move the action to a single player character that you have chosen beforehand, so you might want to go with a key one if that's how the campaign works, or just go with your best role player. Now, while the module does suggest a certain piece of music for this scene, I'm going to offer a different song as my recommendation. Here are some of the additional songs that I added to my own game soundtrack for the adventure, and chosen from Graham Plowman's Tales of the Necronomicon and then Nox Arcana's album Necronomicon. Plowman has a track called The Thing on the Doorstep. It's a good ambience for this scene, and if you can time it right, the song actually ends with a knocking at the door. For my game, I told the player that I had selected how they just couldn't fall asleep after that vision and that troubling dream, so instead they just kind of sat up all night. And as the morning sun started coming in through the blinds, I asked the player what it was that they wanted to do. Either when you wish for it to happen, or at the end of the song, there's going to be a knocking at the door, and the PCs will find a messenger there with a letter from the local asylum that's asking the player character to gather their friends together and come to the asylum to identify an unknown patient.
You know, I have been combating the mythos for so long that having an asylum head write me up to come on down and identify one of my insane buddies, that just comes with the territory at this point. Am I right?
The module suggests, and I concur with this, that Game Masters should probably put this handout note inside of an envelope and then address the envelope to the player character. That way the player sitting around the table has to actually open up the envelope and remove the letter, and that's kind of fun for immersion. Once the PCs have gotten it and they've gathered all together, they're going to head to Hanwell Asylum, where they will discover that one of their friends is now totally insane. And the only thing that they had on them at the time that they were taken was a note that named the player character that the letter from the asylum was then sent to. Game Masters will need to decide who this insane friend is. If it's being put into an existing campaign, you can then just choose one of the non-player characters that you've used before. Or if this is a one-shot or a first-time adventure, Game Masters should actually explain beforehand who the PC's different friends are. That way there's a little bit of familiarity when they open up this padded cell, and they see their friend that's now completely nuts. Now, the module does not specify whether this character is going to be male or it's going to be female, and they're only going to refer to them as John Doe. So, Game Masters, you can choose if you want it to be a man or a woman that's the friend that's now insane. Game Masters will need to write out whatever the note is that John Doe had on them. The module gives some different suggestions of what it might say, but if you've had previous adventures, you can reference back to those previous adventures. For my game, I made the note and then I distressed it. I even carried it around in my back pocket, folded up for a few days, to get it nice and worn.
That would explain why this note had a certain aroma to it.
From here, the player characters might try to talk to their insane friend, who's only going to be reciting a very famous chant about Cthulhu over and over again. They might also head out to Hyde Park, where their friend was first found, but eventually they're going to have to go to their friend's house. Now, there's a few different ways that you can play the friend's house or apartment, however you wanted to do it. For my game, I had all the doors locked and the PCs had to break inside. That way we could have a little bit of fun with some pick-lock skills.
And once we got inside, we encountered a conspiracy theorist dream decor. I mean, this place is going to take us hours to search for clues.
Instead of having the players roll spot checks or anything to find all the clues that are inside the apartment, The Game Master should just hand the players all the clues that they find. Again, this scenario is aimed more at solving the puzzles than it is about making rolls to see if they find the clues in order to solve the puzzles. And the clues that they're going to find here is going to lead to a lot of different leads. There is an error in the module that says that you hand them handouts 2 through 9 here, but you're actually supposed to hand them handouts 2 through 10, which comes to 9 handouts. You should also give them a single piece of the puzzle.
Holy crap, guys. I totally remember this thing from my nightmare. Was it too much to ask that that was just a simple dream?
From here, the player characters could follow any number of the leads. And one of those leads is going to take them to Cleopatra's Needle. Here I chose the track Temple of the Black Pharaoh from the Nox Arcana album Necronomicon. They're also going to meet a mysterious character here named Vitus Varnus. He is a bit of a wild card for game masters to use to maybe help steer the players around in case they start wandering off track or bail them out of jail if for some reason they end up in jail. But he's a nice little tool that you can use just to kind of keep them bouncing in the right direction if they go completely off the rails. While they meet him, he is going to give them a very critical tip that they're going to need later when they meet Aleister Crowley. While you can play Vitus Varnus a lot of different ways, and the module suggests different ways that you could play him, for my game, I made him one of the avatars of Nyarlathotep, who is really just here as an observer. And for that reason, they did bump into him again at the very end of the scenario when they went to St. Paul's Cathedral. They looked over, and Vitus Varnus was kind of standing across the street, smoking a cigarette and getting a front row seat for what may or may not be the apocalypse. Also, there is another handout that the players are going to receive here. Hopefully your players are going to look closely at it in order to catch the 2 symbols hidden amongst the hieroglyphs. Don't give them any clues or any spot rolls to find it. Let the players do it themselves. If they miss the clue, then it's their own fault for not looking closely. Another place that they're going to visit is the British Museum, and there are a lot of clues here. Among the different things they're going to find is another piece of the puzzle that's here on display. I encourage game masters to add a little bit here stating that maybe that piece is of a different size or even a different material than the piece that they have, the pieces that were in their dream. Otherwise, the players might get it in their heads that the purpose of the adventure is for them to run around and gather up all these different puzzle pieces. In the library, they're going to find the John Dee translation of the Necronomicon, though several important pages are going to be missing and the players are going to have to search and track those down. They also get to meet Professor J.R.R. Tolkien, who is here translating Beowulf. Personally, I find the whole inclusion of Tolkien to be a bit forced and a bit weird, but my players enjoyed it, so that's all that counts.
Holy crap, Professor Tolkien! I am a huge fan of those books that you haven't written yet. The Hobbit, I loved it. Would it be too difficult for you to maybe, write me in there somewhere as like a dashing elf or something? Because that would be awesome.
Eventually, the PCs are going to visit the home of Aleister Crowley. The scene with Crowley can go several different ways, just depending on how you want to run it. He can be extremely friendly, he can also be extremely cold, or it can get a little bit twisted in order to spice things up. If you go with the spicy one, then what happens is he's very friendly at first, and then at the end of the conversation, the PCs, hear kind of a faint cry for help coming from another door in the room. And if the PCs go to investigate and open that door, they're going to find a grisly scene. This might lead to a combat with Crowley and his manservant, or at least some sanity rolls. But whatever the result, the PCs need to get out of the house with the clues from Crowley. What happened when some of my players lost their sanity rolls is that when they saw the gruesome scene, is they kind of came to out in the street, but they were all clutching the clues that they got from Crowley's house. Eventually, the player characters will also track down Megan Angel Schneider, who was a badass occultist bodyguard as well as the strange woman from the very beginning of the adventure. There might be a good deal of roleplay here as the player characters are trying to figure out how much they should trust Angel, or Angel's trying to figure out how much she should trust the PCs. But once they all decide that they can trust each other, she can cast an augury spell, which can take 1/2 of the player characters back into that vision and let them have another chance to interact with this whole puzzle. For my game, I told the players that they were not allowed to copy down any of the symbols that they saw on the puzzle when they had their next interaction with it. But the moment that the vision was over with, they could then write down all the symbols that they remember seeing. But they couldn't write them down at the time because once the vision was over, whatever they wrote down was going to vanish along with the vision. Now, they only have 90 seconds in order to interact with the puzzle, so hopefully they're going to make the most with it during that little bit of time that they have. Angel also tells the PCs after this vision that she feels that they should go to St. Paul's Cathedral to kind of check it out. If your players have already gone to St. Paul's Cathedral, which they probably have, then she's going to tell them that she just has a feeling that maybe there was something that they missed. Now, when they do go back there and they visit the tomb of Christopher Wren, they're going to learn that Christopher Wren was buried with some very important papers with him. And this means that the player characters need to go back to St. Paul's Cathedral and break into the tomb of Christopher Wren.
This adventure is just like National Treasure or something, except I'm Nicolas Cage and we're breaking into Christopher Wren's tomb.
Breaking into the tomb is the first real part of the adventure that should be requiring some sort of rolls, maybe some stealth rolls, or maybe just strength rolls in order to pry the lid off the tomb. Now, strength checks or any other method that they use to get the lid off of the tomb really shouldn't be treated more about if they get the lid off, but more about if they can do it quietly without breaking it or bringing anyone's attention to it. Game masters should have it where the players are going to be pretty much guaranteed to get the lid off to get to the clues that are inside, but simply make the rolls about whether they're able to do this quietly or be able to do it without anyone knowing that they had been there at all. Inside the tomb, they're going to find the original Necronomicon for Angel to read and translate, and for my game, I also added another puzzle piece here, the one with the Eye of Ra on it. Again, I made sure to mention that it was of a different size and a different material than any of the pieces they'd found before. That way, the players didn't get confused and think they had to search them down. They'll also find the second half of the star chart that they got from John Dee's flat, and with it, they can deduce that from the stars are going to be right for Cthulhu's return on this very night.
Or at least the very night of the day that we went in to check the star machine, which begs the question, if we hadn't gone to check to see when the stars would be right, would the world never end? It's kind of like the Matrix, when the Oracle tells them about that vase.
Once Angel has deciphered the Necronomicon, she can cast the spell to summon the Elder Sign in order for the players to assemble it all and stop Cthulhu's return. I also made sure that she did tell the players that one of the symbols, the pieces for the puzzle, are going to be summoned at the time that she casts the spell. And I know I seem to be really harping on this, but honestly, I see it as the biggest potential problem in the game, is that the players get it in their head that they need to, run around London gathering up all these puzzle pieces, which is going to detract them from what the actual purpose of the game is, and it might make them feel that they're up against impossible odds, but that's not what the game's about at all. So that's why I keep bringing up making all the puzzle pieces different or having her mention that. That's actually my only real criticism of this adventure, is that it doesn't make that clear. Now, in order to go back to do the ceremony, they're going to have to break back into St. Paul's Cathedral. So if the PCs did cause a stir or made a ruckus or damaged the tomb and they found out that the tomb was damaged, there might be a little bit more security or even a police presence tonight when they go to St. Paul's. And this can make for a fun and exciting scene. Maybe as they're getting chased up the stairs, desperate to get to the top before the portals begin opening. Now, the module intentionally does not say where on the roof the player characters need to be. For my game, I made it the Golden Gallery, which is atop the dome and over 500 steps up. Once the ceremony begins and the portals begin opening, and any police that might be chasing them, if there was some sort of, exciting moment there, they're going to become a little bit distracted by the giant blue portals glowing in the sky, so that can give the PCs that little bit of time they need to do the ceremony, and afterwards you can deal with them trying to get away from the cops. Game masters should play a suggested song from the soundtrack, which gives the players 2.5 minutes in order to arrange the puzzle correctly. If they have gotten all the clues throughout the adventure correct, they will be able to solve all but one of the pieces. The fifth piece they're going to have to guess at, and this gives them a 33% chance of guessing correctly. At this point in the game, game masters have several ways that they could end it. Personally, I plan to run it that if they got 4 of them correct, then Cthulhu is going to be banished from our world until the next time that all the stars are right, which is going to be in about 300 years. However, if by that 33% chance they got all 5 parts correct, then Cthulhu was going to be banished from entering our world forever, or as long as St. Paul's Cathedral is still there at least.
And you know what? We solved that puzzle perfectly, which means we saved the world, which also means you're welcome.
Overall, my players and I had a ton of fun with this scenario, and while it only took us a few hours to play from start to finish, game masters are giving it several areas, places where they could extend the adventure out to even more time or more sessions, which is really, really cool. So if you want to turn this into maybe a mini campaign, the module will help you do that. Game masters will need to do a good deal of prep before they run it, cutting out all the handouts, building their music playlist and studying the adventure. That way they can, run it nice and smooth with maximum dramatic flow and, as little time as they need, actually pulling it open in the middle of the game and trying to read from the module. It's a lot of work beforehand, but it was also completely worth it for us. I really do hope we see more adventures and more adventures like this from Two Starving Gnolls. So Game Masters, if you are looking for a very good adventure with puzzles and high role-playing, I highly recommend that you check Pax Cthuliana out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you want to see some more of our other reviews and other videos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, gamers, you have a great day. You know I got Tolkien's autograph, right? I mean, it ain't worth much now, but one day, well, it's going to be worth a lot.